Silence is not the absence of noise. It's the presence of strength. Seneca. When you stay silent longer than they expected, my friends, you shake their entire perception of control. They thought your quiet would mean weakness, that your lack of response would make you invisible. But silence, oh, silence has its own kind of thunder, the kind that doesn't roar. It echoes, it lingers, it haunts me. Hey folks, imagine this. There's a storm raging outside, the sky tearing itself apart with thunder and lightning. Everyone runs, hides, or shouts over the noise. But there's this one mountain, unmoved, silent, still, watching. That's what true silence is like. It doesn't compete with chaos, it outlasts it. Now picture this in your own life. You stopped talking, you stopped explaining, you stopped chasing, and suddenly they're confused. They thought by ignoring you, they could win. They thought silence was a punishment, not realizing it was the beginning of their own reflection. You see, folks, silence is not about shutting up. It's about showing up differently. It's about saying, I know my worth and I don't need to prove it. Marcus Aurelius once said, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. That's what silence teaches you, to rise above without saying a word, to let their noise crumble against your peace. And the best part? It drives them crazy. They expected drama, explanation, desperation, but all they got was stillness. That's when they start to realize you've changed. Think about it. When you stop feeding the fire, the flames die on their own. When you stop replying to manipulation, it loses oxygen. When you stop chasing, they start wondering. That's the paradox. They expected your silence to make you fade, but instead it makes you unforgettable. Because silence doesn't hide you, it highlights you. It's like a movie scene where the music cuts out and suddenly everyone pays attention to the quiet. That's your power, my friends. You've become the pause they can't skip. But let's break the lie here. The world tells you silence means weakness, that you should explain yourself, defend your side, keep proving your value. Nonsense. The strongest lions don't roar all day. The sharpest swords don't need to swing to be respected. Sometimes not reacting is the reaction that changes everything. And yes, it's hard. It's hard when your ego screams to respond. It's hard when your heart wants closure. It's hard when you want to be understood, but real strength isn't about being loud, it's about being centered. Stoicism isn't about feeling nothing, it's about not being controlled by what you feel. You become the calm in the storm, the eye that never moves while everything else spins around you. Sooner or later, they'll notice. They'll realize your silence isn't distance, it's discipline. And that, my friends, is when the power starts to shift. You are no longer waiting to be heard. You're watching them try to figure out what your silence means. And trust me, it means everything. So today, if you're holding your silence, don't see it as weakness. See it as transformation. Because silence doesn't mean you lost. It means you've leveled up. You're no longer fighting for attention. You're protecting your peace. Say this with me in the comments. My silence is my power. Because it is. Stay with me, my friends. What happens next will open your eyes even wider. Number 1, the confusion in their mind. Your silence will confuse those who once thought they controlled your emotions. Epictetus. When you stay silent longer than they expected, something strange starts to happen in their mind. At first, they don't understand it. They thought they had you figured out, that you'd react like everyone else does when they pull away. They thought silence would make you panic, chase, or explain yourself, but instead, you vanish into calm. No text, no explanation, no response, just silence. And that silence doesn't just make them curious, it makes them uncomfortable. Imagine a stage, my friends. You've been performing your part. talking, showing effort, being present, and suddenly you walk off mid-scene. The lights stay on, the music still plays, but the audience, they don't know what to do anymore. They keep staring at the empty stage, waiting for you to return. That's what your silence feels like to them. A scene they didn't expect to end. A performance they thought they directed, until they realize you left without saying goodbye. You see, people become addicted to your responses. Your attention becomes their mirror. They measure their importance through how much you react. So when you stop reacting, that mirror shatters and they no longer know how they look in your world. That's when confusion sets in. At first, they'll tell themselves stories. They just need time. They'll be back. They're playing a game. But deep down, they feel something off. Because silence is not passive. It's piercing. It sneaks into their mind like a whisper in a quiet room. Every hour that passes without your name flashing on their screen starts to echo, and that echo says, you no longer control the narrative. Here's the truth they never saw coming. Silence exposes dependency. When you remove your energy, it reveals who needed it the most. They thought you were emotionally weak. They thought ignoring you would make you break. But silence flips the power dynamic. It shows who actually can't handle the distance. And that realization hits them like a cold wind. But let's be honest, my friends. It's not easy to stay silent. It's one of the hardest things you'll ever do. Because the mind screams for closure. The ego wants to speak. The heart wants to be heard. You'll feel that itch to text, to call, to explain, just so they know you're not hurt. But that's the trap. That's the bait that keeps you dancing in their game. Marcus Aurelius once said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Your silence is proof that you finally understand that truth. You can't control what they do, but you can control how you respond. Or better yet, how you don't respond. When they don't hear from you, their imagination becomes your ally. It starts to do all the work for you. They start to wonder, did I lose them? Did I go too far? Are they done with me? And in that wondering, the balance shifts. The more they think, the less control they feel, because silence creates space, and in that space, their mind begins to turn against them. It's like taking away someone's favorite drug. At first, they pretend they're fine, but soon the withdrawal kicks in. They scroll through old messages, re-watch moments, analyze every silence like it's a code to crack. They can't stand that they no longer have access to your energy. They'll act unbothered on the surface, but deep inside, their thoughts start to spiral. That's the thing about silence. It doesn't shout, but it shows. It reveals who's at peace and who's at war within themselves. And when you can hold your silence longer than they can handle theirs, you show them that their actions no longer have the power to move you. You're no longer reacting, you're observing. You're no longer chasing, you're choosing. But they'll try to rationalize it. They'll say you're being stubborn. They'll say you don't care. Because people fear what they can't read. Your silence becomes mystery, and mystery becomes magnetic. The very thing they thought would push you away now pulls at them. They start checking your online status. They notice your absence in rooms you used to be in. They begin to replay the last words you said, wondering if they missed something. That's when you know your silence has entered their mind. And here's where most people fail. They break too soon. They mistake silence for waiting instead of transforming. You must remember, my friends, silence isn't a pause, it's a process. It's not about ignoring them, it's about realigning yourself. When you hold that quiet, you're not punishing them, you're protecting your peace. You're proving to yourself that your emotions belong to you, not to someone else's behavior. And yes, there will be nights when the urge hits you. When you stare at your phone, fingers hovering over the screen, heart pounding with the thought of reaching out. But ask yourself, why would you give them back the power you earned through discipline? Why would you let temporary emotion destroy permanent growth? You see, silence teaches you more about them than words ever could. It reveals who values connection and who values control. It shows who reaches out and who retreats. It strips away illusions and forces truth to surface, and sometimes that truth hurts, but it also heals. The hardest part isn't the silence itself. It's trusting what it's doing behind the scenes. It's believing that while you say nothing, everything is still moving. Because the universe works in silence too. Seeds grow in silence. Healing happens in silence. Strength builds in silence. So don't rush to fill the quiet. Let it work for you. As time passes, their confusion will turn into curiosity, their curiosity into reflection, and their reflection into regret. They'll start to realize that silence wasn't your weakness, it was your awakening. They'll see that the person who once reacted to every little thing now moves like water, calm, deep, and unstoppable. So hold the line, my friends. Stay in that stillness a little longer than they expect. Because the one who controls their silence controls the story. Say it with me in the comments. I choose my silence. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world around you that silence isn't the absence of love. It's the presence of power. And stay with me, because what happens next will make them question everything they once believed about you. Number 2. When curiosity turns into doubt. When silence enters the room, truth starts to whisper. Seneca. When you stay silent longer than they expected, my friends, curiosity is the first seed that grows in their mind, but it doesn't stay innocent for long. Curiosity has a way of turning into something heavier, darker, something that begins to scratch at their peace. Doubt. At first they're curious, maybe even amused. They think you're just having a moment. They assume you'll reach out soon, that this silence is just your little tantrum. But the longer it stretches, the more that amusement fades. Silence has this strange way of making confident people second-guess themselves. It's like being in a room where you can hear your own heartbeat, but no one else is breathing. The longer it goes on, the louder it gets. Imagine a candle burning in a dark hallway. Every day your silence continues. The flame flickers a little weaker, not because of you, but because of them. Their certainty starts to fade, their pride begins to dim, and the glow of control they once had over you starts to die out. That's what silence does. It snuffs out arrogance, one breath at a time. Now they start to think, wait, did I misjudge them? Why aren't they reacting? Are they talking to someone else? And that, my friends, is when the real tension begins, because doubt is louder than words. They might tell themselves they don't care. They might post something online to make it seem like they're fine. They might even try to provoke you to see if you'll break your silence. But the more they try to look strong, the more their mask cracks. Their mind becomes a battlefield between pride and fear. Pride says they'll come back. Fear whispers, what if they don't? That's when your silence starts to do its work. It becomes a mirror, showing them their own insecurity, their own need for control. And this reflection hurts, because for the first time, they can't escape it. Silence doesn't give them a chance to twist the story, to rewrite what happened, to defend their ego. It just sits there, unbothered, staring back. But here's what makes this part difficult for you, because holding silence during this stage is like holding your breath underwater. The pressure builds. You'll start to wonder if it's working. You'll want to break the tension, to reach out and clear things up. But remember, Clarity doesn't come from chasing. It comes from watching what people do when you stop giving them access to your energy. Epictetus said, "What upsets people is not things themselves, but their judgments about things." That's the secret behind this stage. Your silence isn't hurting them. Their own judgment of your silence is. They expected a reaction, and your refusal to give it destroys the script they wrote for you. They can't label you desperate, they can't call you emotional, and they can't feed their ego through your attention anymore. You've removed their control without saying a single word. And here's the part that gets poetic. Your silence starts living rent-free in their head. They'll wake up thinking about you, scroll through their phone at night, and even start comparing your absence to the presence of others. Every conversation they have feels a little emptier. Every connection they seek feels a little forced. Because silence isn't something you can replace. It's something you feel. Still, they'll resist that realization at first. They'll try to convince themselves that you're the one being stubborn, that they're the strong one. But deep down, something begins to shift. They start to respect what they can't control. And that's the beauty of this stage. Respect grows where control dies. But staying silent this long demands discipline. It's not easy to watch someone pretend they don't miss you when you know they do. It's not easy to see their pride and say nothing. But that's where your strength becomes rare. You're not silent because you don't care. You're silent because you finally do care, just not in the same way. You care about your peace more than their validation. You care about your growth more than their guilt. You care about what's next, not what was. And when they finally start to feel the sting of your absence, it hits them differently. Because your silence isn't revenge, it's revelation. It exposes who they are when your energy is no longer feeding their comfort. So hold the silence a little longer. Don't break it to soothe their confusion. Don't explain your peace to those who benefit from your chaos. Let doubt do its work, because doubt leads to reflection, and reflection leads to regret. Your silence is rewriting their perception of you. It's taking you from predictable to powerful, from emotional to unshakable. You're teaching them something words never could, that your value doesn't depend on who notices it. So, my friends, write it in the comments. My silence speaks truth. Show them, show yourself, show the world around you that silence is not the absence of connection, it's the presence of conviction. And stay with me, because what comes next will shake their ego to the core. Number 3. When the silence becomes unbearable. The loudest storms often come from the quietest skies. Marcus Aurelius. There comes a moment, my friends, when your silence stops being something they can shrug off. At first, they convinced themselves they didn't care. They told their friends they were over it. They acted like your absence meant nothing. But the truth? Silence has a strange way of growing heavier the longer it lingers. What once felt like peace to them now feels like pressure. What once felt like control now feels like chaos. You see, silence isn't static. It evolves. It begins as curiosity, becomes confusion, and then slowly turns into discomfort. And when you hold that silence longer than they can handle, it starts to echo in their mind like footsteps down an empty hallway. Every corner they turn, every quiet moment in their day, something reminds them of you. Not your words, not your messages, but your absence. The space you once filled so easily is now a void they can't ignore. Imagine a room filled with noise, laughter, arguments, music, and then suddenly it all stops. The air feels thick. Every sound seems louder, every thought sharper. That's what your silence does. It magnifies their own thoughts. It forces them to hear what they tried to bury. Silence is the mirror that never lies. It reflects every insecurity, every regret, every unspoken truth they thought they could hide behind pride. Now they start to feel it, that sting, that slow burn of realization. They begin to notice how peaceful it was when you were around, how steady your presence felt, how your voice brought balance to their chaos. And now that balance is gone. The silence becomes a weight they carry everywhere, on the drive home, in bed at night, in moments they thought would be joyful. Because silence has memory, my friends. It remembers what used to be said and what no longer is. But don't be fooled. They won't show it at first. They'll still pretend they're fine. They might post about how happy they are or how unbothered they've become. But pay attention. Those who talk the loudest about peace are often the most disturbed by it. You've taken away their emotional fuel. They expected drama, not distance. They wanted a reaction, not reflection. And now your calmness is suffocating their control. Epictetus said, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinion about things." Your silence has now become that thing they can't form an opinion about. It's unpredictable, it's uncomfortable, and it's powerful. They don't know whether to wait, to reach out, or to move on. That uncertainty eats at them because it forces them to face the one thing they've been avoiding, the fact that they no longer have power over your emotions. But let's not lie, my friends. It's also not easy for you. Holding silence this long is not for the faint-hearted. You'll have nights where your mind plays tricks on you. You'll wonder if they ever think about you. You'll battle the urge to break the silence just to feel some kind of closure. But remember this, closure doesn't come from answers. It comes from acceptance. You're not silent to punish them. You're silent to protect yourself. You're not ignoring them. You're investing in your peace. Silence at this stage becomes sacred. It's no longer a tactic. It's transformation. You're learning to sit with yourself without seeking validation. You're realizing that you don't need to be heard to be understood. That's real strength. That's emotional maturity. The Stoics didn't teach us to suppress emotion. They taught us to master it. And mastering silence is the highest form of emotional control. Meanwhile, they begin to spiral in their own thoughts. Their curiosity turns into anxiety. They check your online status, wonder who you're with, and start to notice how life keeps moving without them in it. That realization stings because it proves something they didn't want to admit. You were never the one who needed them. They were the one who needed your stability. That's why silence is so unbearable to those who crave control. It doesn't give them closure, it gives them reflection. And reflection can be painful when the truth isn't flattering. They start to realize that maybe they overplayed their hand. Maybe they underestimated your discipline. Maybe, just maybe, they lost someone who wasn't afraid to walk away without a word. And here's the irony. They'll start to hear your silence in everything, in the song on the radio, in the quiet after a laugh, in the pauses between conversations. They'll start to feel your absence not as emptiness, but as energy, the kind of energy that once grounded them, the kind they didn't appreciate when it was there. You've now reached the point where your silence speaks louder than their explanations ever could. You're not proving a point. You're revealing one. You're showing them, without a single word, that your peace doesn't depend on their presence. That's when respect begins to replace confusion. Slowly, the tone changes. What used to be arrogance becomes curiosity. What used to be pride becomes reflection. What used to be control becomes realization. But stay strong, my friends. Don't break the silence just because they finally notice it. True power lies in restraint. The Stoic strength is not in what you say, it's in what you don't say. Your silence has now become your armor, your declaration, your calm revolution. So hold your ground, breathe through the quiet. Let the storm rage outside while you remain the mountain, unmoved, unshaken, unbothered. Say it with me in the comments. My peace is louder. Show them, show yourself, show the world around you that your silence isn't the absence of love. It's the presence of wisdom. And stay with me, my friends, because what comes next is the stage where silence turns into realization, and realization always brings regret. Number 4. When regret begins to surface. People don't realize the value of your presence until your absence becomes their silence. Epictetus. When the silence stretches far beyond what they expected, my friends, something begins to shift deep inside them. It's no longer just curiosity or confusion. It's something heavier, something they can't shake off. Regret. At first, it's subtle, like a whisper that sneaks in when the world gets quiet. But over time, it grows louder. It starts to haunt them in moments they least expect. When they scroll through their phone and don't see your name, when they hear a song that reminds them of your laugh, when they realize they're surrounded by noise, yet it doesn't fill the space you left behind. Regret doesn't announce itself. It creeps in quietly like fog over a field. One morning they'll wake up and realize that your silence feels permanent, and that thought terrifies them, because they thought they were in control. They thought they could ignore you and come back when it suited them. But now, that confidence is gone. They're no longer sure if the door they closed will ever open again. Imagine this, my friends. Someone throwing a stone into a lake, watching the ripples spread, expecting them to disappear. But the ripples keep going. They never stop. That's what your silence has become. A ripple they can't erase. It keeps touching parts of their mind they wish you'd never reached. They start replaying everything. The words they said, the choices they made, the way they took your calm for granted. And the more they think, the deeper the regret grows. They'll try to distract themselves. They'll scroll endlessly, talk to new people, chase new excitement. But nothing hits the same. Why? Because energy can't be replaced. It can only be remembered. And your silence, that calm discipline, carries an energy they can't find in anyone else. They start realizing that what they mistook for detachment was actually strength, that what they thought was coldness was actually peace. And here's where the lie breaks, my friends. The world told them that the one who speaks less feels less, that silence means you've lost. But the truth is the opposite. Silence means you've won. You've mastered your reaction. You've stepped out of the game entirely. You've stopped chasing validation and started valuing peace. That's what makes your silence so powerful. It shows that your emotions are no longer up for negotiation. Now, they start feeling what you once felt. The waiting, the wondering, the endless mental replay of what if. It's ironic, isn't it? The same silence they used to test you is now testing them. The same distance they created is now suffocating them. The same calm they mocked is now the calm they crave. They don't know how to fix it because for the first time you've given them nothing to work with, no words to twist, no reaction to manipulate, just silence. And silence is undefeated. Seneca once wrote, "To bear trials with a calm mind robs misfortune of its strength." That's what your silence does. It takes the power out of their games. It leaves them wrestling with themselves. And the hardest battle to fight is the one with your own conscience. But here's where the real transformation happens. You start to see that their regret isn't your responsibility. You stop needing them to understand your worth because you already do. Their confusion is no longer your burden to fix. Their pain is no longer your business to soothe. You realize that sometimes the best closure is knowing you didn't lose anything. You just outgrew what couldn't meet your peace. Holding silence through this stage takes strength, my friends. It's not easy to watch someone wake up to their regret and still choose not to say, "I told you so." It's not easy to see them hurt and still stay detached. But that's where your power lies, in restraint. Because you're no longer acting out of emotion, you're acting from awareness. You've learned that not every regret deserves your return. And you know what's beautiful? Your silence starts changing its meaning. It's no longer about them, it's about you. It's about building peace in the space where chaos once lived. It's about learning that silence isn't just something you give, it's something you become. Now, when they think of you, they don't remember the arguments, the explanations, the long messages. They remember the quiet, the stillness, the calm confidence that said, "I don't need to shout to be understood." And that memory becomes a ghost they can't escape, because your silence, my friends, has become a mirror, and every time they look into it, they see their own mistakes staring back. So if you're in that stage where regret is beginning to surface, don't rush it. Don't break the silence to comfort them. Let them feel the full weight of what they lost, because healing doesn't come from reopening doors. It comes from locking them and walking away with peace. Say it with me in the comments. My silence teaches. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world that your quiet is not a void. It's a voice that says, "I've evolved beyond explanation." And stay with me, my friends, because what comes next is the moment where regret turns into realization, and realization always brings respect. Number 5. When fear of replacement begins to set in. Silence makes people wonder what you're thinking. Fear makes them imagine the worst. Marcus Aurelius. When your silence lasts longer than they ever planned for, my friends, something new begins to stir inside them. Fear. Not the kind that screams out loud, but the kind that whispers at 2 a.m. when the phone doesn't buzz. The kind that creeps in when they see you online, but realize you're not reaching out. The kind that turns confidence into anxiety. They start to wonder, not if you're angry, but if you've moved on. At first, they tried to convince themselves that they didn't need you. They thought they had all the control, that your quiet would be temporary, that sooner or later you'd return to orbit around their ego. But silence is a strange teacher. It doesn't shout, it shows. And what it's showing them now is something they didn't expect. You're no longer available. Emotionally, energetically, spiritually, you've stepped into a space they can't enter anymore. Imagine this, my friends. Someone who once had your full attention is now standing at the edge of a stage, and the spotlight has shifted away. The crowd that once roared for them is now focused elsewhere. That emptiness, that lack of applause, it's deafening. That's what your silence feels like to them now. It's not just the absence of communication, it's the end of their performance. Now their mind starts to play tricks on them. Are they seeing someone else? Did they find peace without me? Were they always this strong? Each unanswered question becomes a ghost that haunts their confidence, because the silence they once thought they controlled is now controlling them. Every moment you stay silent adds to the narrative in their head, and fear begins to fill in the blanks. They'll scroll through your posts, check your stories, maybe even look for clues in your silence. Every picture, every update becomes a potential sign. They'll tell themselves they're just curious, but the truth is, they're scared. Scared that they misjudged you. Scared that they pushed away someone irreplaceable. Scared that your calmness means closure. And this is where the lie they believed starts to crumble, the lie that silence means surrender. Because when you refuse to chase, you flip the entire power dynamic. You show that you were never competing for attention. You were commanding respect. They start to realize that the energy they took for granted was actually rare. Not many people can stay silent with that kind of composure. Not many people can disappear without bitterness. Not many people can walk away without slamming the door. Seneca once said, "He who is brave is free." That's exactly what your silence communicates now. Freedom. You are no longer bound to their moods, their validation, or their approval. You've broken the emotional leash, and that realization terrifies them because they're used to power coming from reaction. But when there's no reaction, they're left powerless. Still, you'll feel the temptation, my friends. The mind will whisper, maybe I should post something to make them notice. The heart will ache and say, maybe I should check in just once. But that's your ego trying to negotiate with your growth. Don't do it, because silence loses its strength the moment you try to prove something. True power doesn't need an audience. It only needs awareness. While you stay silent, they start to see you differently. The person they once dismissed as predictable is now a mystery. The one they thought would always be there has become unreachable. They start comparing you to others, and no matter how hard they try, the replacements don't work. The laughter feels forced, the connection feels shallow. The new energy doesn't match yours. Because silence creates distance, and distance creates perspective. They'll begin to realize that no one else gives them the same calmness, the same peace, the same authenticity, and that's when fear hits its peak. Because fear, my friends, is not about losing someone. It's about realizing they never belonged to you in the first place, and your silence, steady and unbroken, becomes the reminder of that truth. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." That's what you've become, a master of your emotions. Your silence isn't punishment, it's proof. Proof that you've evolved. Proof that your peace no longer depends on whether someone sees your worth. So let them wonder, let them question, let them sit in the discomfort of not knowing where they stand. Because the truth is, you're not playing a game. You've outgrown it. You're no longer seeking their attention. You're protecting your energy. You're not waiting for their apology. You're writing your next chapter in peace. And when fear finally turns into realization, when they understand that your silence isn't an act but a lifestyle, they'll feel it. That sting of regret, that ache of understanding that they lost someone who was never meant to be begged for. My friends, this is where your silence becomes your crown. It no longer needs to prove anything, it simply is. It represents control, wisdom, and strength that no argument could ever display. So stay still, stay calm, stay untouchable. Because when they start fearing your replacement, it's not about another person, it's about the version of you they can never reach again. Say it with me in the comments. My silence is my freedom. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world that fear only rises when power shifts. And stay with me, my friends, because what comes next is the moment the fear fades and the respect finally begins. Number 6. When respect quietly replaces fear. Silence is the language of the wise, and respect is its echo. Marcus Aurelius. When the fear of losing you finally settles in, my friends, something powerful begins to replace it: respect. But this isn't the loud kind of respect that comes with apologies or grand gestures. No, this is quiet respect, the kind that comes when someone realizes you're not who you used to be. You've changed the energy. You've evolved. You've become the calm they can't control. At first, they fought the silence. They tried to resist it, deny it, distract themselves from it. They told themselves they were fine, but silence has a way of maturing truth. It turns denial into awareness. The more you remain still, the more they start to see you differently. You're no longer the one they thought they could play, test, or manipulate. You're no longer emotional, reactive, or easy to provoke. You've become something else, steady. Imagine a storm raging across the sea, waves crashing, thunder roaring. And then, after hours of chaos, the sea suddenly goes still. Not because the storm won, but because the sea decided it no longer reacts to every wind that blows. That's you now, calm, deep, unshakable, and that calmness commands respect. They start to notice the difference in you. Your tone has changed. Or maybe it's your silence that's doing all the talking. You're not proving anything anymore, and that unsettles them. Because for the first time, they realize that the power they thought they had wasn't power. It was your willingness. They mistook your kindness for dependency, your patience for weakness. But now they see what real power looks like. It's peaceful, composed, and untouchable. You see, folks, people often confuse attention with importance. They think that if you're talking, you care. If you're silent, you've lost. But silence flips that idea upside down. When you stop explaining, you stop feeding their ego. When you stop chasing, you stop confirming their worth. And suddenly, your absence becomes a mirror that reflects their own flaws back to them. They start to respect you, not because you demanded it, but because your silence earned it. Seneca once said, "It is the power of the mind to be unconquerable." That's the core of this stage. You've become unconquerable because your emotions are no longer controlled by their actions. You've taken back your peace, your focus, your energy. They feel it in the way you move now, in your quiet confidence, your steady posture, your disinterest in drama. You've stopped being predictable, and that unpredictability makes them pay attention. They'll replay the last time you spoke, analyzing your words like clues in a mystery. They'll wonder if you've forgotten them or forgiven them. They'll try to test your silence again, sending subtle signals, hoping you'll break. But the more you hold your ground, the more they realize they're no longer in control of your reaction. You are. This is where your silence transforms from a shield into a crown. You're not hiding anymore. You're reigning. You're not reacting. You're choosing. You're not waiting. You're evolving. And they can sense it. That quiet strength is magnetic. It makes them look at you differently, even if they don't say it out loud. But let's be honest, my friends. Staying in this space isn't easy. There's a part of you that still remembers how things were, the part that misses the comfort of communication. But now, you're learning something greater. You're learning that you don't have to raise your voice to make noise. Your silence has become your presence. Your peace has become your proof. And while they're out there trying to understand how you became so untouchable, you're outgrowing the version of yourself that once begged to be seen. That's the irony. They're finally seeing you clearly, just as you've stopped needing their validation. This is the transformation silence brings. It teaches you that true power doesn't seek acknowledgement. It radiates naturally. You're no longer chasing closure. You are the closure. You're not searching for peace. You are the peace. And once you reach that level, no one can take it from you. So now, when they think of you, there's a pause, a subtle shift in energy. They might never admit it, but they respect you. They respect your strength, your restraint, your serenity. They respect that you walked away without hate, without chaos, without turning bitter. Because that's the kind of strength the world doesn't forget easily. And that, my friends, is the true beauty of silence. It transforms fear into admiration and confusion into respect. You didn't force it. You didn't chase it. You simply became it. Say it with me in the comments. I am a calm power. Show them, show yourself. Show the world around you that the strongest presence needs no introduction. It just is. And stay with me, my friends, because what comes next is when your silence stops being about them entirely and becomes the start of your rebirth. Number 7. When silence becomes your rebirth. Every rebirth begins in silence. Every transformation begins when you stop explaining. Marcus Aurelius. There comes a moment, my friends, when your silence stops being about them entirely. It's no longer a reaction, it's no longer a strategy, it becomes something deeper, a rebirth. The pain that once demanded to be spoken about has quieted. The urge to prove, defend, or chase fades away. You begin to realize that the silence you've been holding isn't a cage, it's a cocoon. And what's emerging from it is not the same person who entered. At first, you might not even notice it happening. The world feels calmer. The noise that once consumed your thoughts loses its power. You wake up one morning, and instead of checking your phone for validation, you check your peace. You measure your worth not by who reaches out, but by how centered you feel. That's the beauty of silence. It doesn't just protect you from others. It reconnects you to yourself. Imagine a forest after a wildfire. For a while, it looks empty, lifeless. But beneath the ashes, life is quietly rebuilding. Roots are strengthening. New growth is forming. That's you, my friends. The version of you that burned under disappointment is gone, but something stronger is taking its place, something unshakable. You no longer wait for them to notice your worth because you've already started to embody it. You've stopped replaying the old story, the one where you were misunderstood, taken for granted, or undervalued. That chapter is closed. Silence has rewritten your identity in ink that only peace can provide. And now, the same stillness that once felt lonely feels like freedom. They'll notice it too. Oh, they will, because silence creates space, and space creates change. You're not chasing closure anymore. You're living it. You're not trying to be heard. You've learned to listen to your own intuition instead. That calm presence, that still energy becomes magnetic. People start to feel it. They sense that you're not who you were, and it unsettles them because they can't access this version of you the way they used to. Seneca once said, "It is a rough road that leads to the heights of greatness." That road, my friends, is silence. Every moment you resisted the urge to reach out, every time you sat with the discomfort instead of escaping it, you were climbing. You were building emotional muscles most people never develop. You've learned what few ever do, that stillness is not stagnation, it's creation. But let's be real, this stage doesn't come without struggle. There are days when you'll still feel the old pull, days when the silence feels too heavy, when the memories come knocking, whispering, "Just send one message." But here's the thing, you don't break silence anymore because of impulse. You only speak from intention. You no longer react, you respond. You no longer reach, you attract. That's how you know you've evolved. You've learned that peace isn't found in answers, it's found in acceptance. You don't need to know why things happened the way they did. You just know they were necessary. The silence that once felt like punishment was actually preparation. It stripped away every illusion that love should hurt, that attention equals affection, that being chosen means being valued. Now you see through all of it. And here's the paradox. The quieter you become, the louder your presence grows. Because real strength doesn't need to announce itself. It's felt. It's sensed. When you walk into a room now, people feel something different in your energy. You've become grounded, unbothered. You've become the person who doesn't need to chase approval because you carry self-assurance in your silence. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." And that's exactly what silence gives you, the ability to no longer care how they interpret your peace. They might think you're cold, detached, or emotionless. Let them, because while they're judging, you're healing. While they're talking, you're transforming. You've stopped trying to prove your light to those who prefer the dark. Now, the same silence that once exposed them has elevated you. It's built patience in your mind, dignity in your heart, and control in your spirit. You've discovered that not every battle is meant to be fought. Some are meant to be outlasted, and you, my friends, have outlasted it. The pain, the confusion, the noise, it all served a purpose. It broke you open just enough for wisdom to enter. This is the point where your silence turns from weapon to wisdom. It's no longer about teaching them a lesson. It's about living yours. You're no longer holding silence out of pride, but out of peace. You've realized you can love people quietly, forgive them silently, and move on gracefully. You don't need to slam the door, you just need to stop standing in it. So when they look back, they won't find the old version of you, the one who explained, defended, and waited. That version burned away in the fire of your silence. What's left now is clarity, calmness, power. You are no longer chasing closure, you are closure. You're no longer trying to be seen, you've become unmissable. So say it with me, my friends. I was silent, and I became new. Write it in the comments. Show them, show yourself. Show the world around you that silence wasn't your ending, it was your evolution. And stay with me, because what comes next isn't about what silence does to them anymore. It's about what silence builds inside you. Number 8. When silence becomes your legacy. What you do not react to, you rise above. Marcus Aurelius. There comes a time, my friends, when your silence no longer feels like a strategy, no longer feels like a shield. It becomes your signature. It becomes the quiet power that defines who you are now. The noise that once triggered you, gone. The people who once drained you, irrelevant. The need to prove, explain, or be understood, finished. Because what began as a decision to protect your peace has turned into the foundation of your strength. You've made it through the hardest part, the waiting, the wondering, the healing. You've outlasted the tests. And now that silence you held with such discipline has transformed into your identity. It's not a weapon anymore, it's wisdom. You've learned that real power doesn't rush, it doesn't beg, it doesn't chase, it simply is. Imagine a river, calm and steady, cutting through mountains over centuries. It doesn't roar to prove its strength, it just keeps flowing. Slowly, patiently, quietly, it reshapes everything in its path. That's your silence now. It has reshaped not just how others see you, but how you see yourself. You've discovered that silence isn't empty, it's full of answers. Every moment you resisted the urge to react, you were teaching yourself emotional control. Every time you stayed calm in the face of chaos, you were training your spirit for peace. You learned that not everything needs closure, not every insult needs a response, and not every ending needs an explanation. You learned that peace isn't something you find, it's something you build inside yourself when the world stops making sense. And guess what happens next? The same people who once underestimated you start feeling your absence differently. It's not just missing you, it's missing the stability you brought. Your energy becomes a memory that speaks louder than their ego. They start to realize what true composure looks like. Because your silence has now become their mirror, and mirrors always reveal what people try to hide. Epictetus said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." That's what your silence gave you. Freedom. The freedom to walk away without resentment. The freedom to exist without needing validation. The freedom to love without losing yourself. You've stopped being controlled by emotion, and that's what makes you untouchable. But here's the most beautiful part. This isn't just about them anymore. This is about you, about the life you're building in the quiet. You're no longer focused on who hurt you, but on who you're becoming. You've learned that peace isn't passive, it's powerful. It gives you clarity to move forward, to dream again, to connect with people who match your calm. You've learned that silence doesn't mean retreat, it means renewal. You're now standing in a place where you no longer need to explain your value. Your silence speaks it for you. You no longer need to prove you've healed. Your peace shows it. You no longer need to remind anyone of what they lost. Life does that on its own. You've reached the point of quiet confidence where your worth is not up for discussion. You've stopped trying to be understood by those committed to misunderstanding you. That's not arrogance, my friends. That's alignment. So if you've made it this far, remember this. Silence was never meant to make you smaller. It was meant to make you stronger. It was the training ground for your rebirth. It stripped you of everything temporary so that what remained would be permanent. Peace, wisdom, clarity, strength. And now your silence has become your legacy. People will remember you not for the noise you made, but for the calm you carried. They'll remember that when others broke, you breathed, that when others screamed, you smiled, that when others fought to be heard, you stood in quiet certainty. Because the world might fear loud power, but it respects quiet strength. So let your silence speak for you from now on. Let it show that you've mastered the art of emotional control, that you've chosen peace over chaos, that you're no longer playing the game, you're writing the rules. Say it with me in the comments. My silence is my legacy. Because it is. It's proof of your evolution, your growth, your discipline. If this message resonated with you, my friends, press that like button, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and make sure to subscribe for more. Because this journey doesn't end here. It only gets deeper. Stay strong, stay calm, and remember, your silence isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of your power.